Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for the invitation.
Pretty awesome. I'm just gonna, RZA, you've always been, I think, thought of as the leader of the Wu-Tang Clan, sort of one of the originators, the main producer. And in this album, I know, Mathematics, you are the sort of lead producer on this. Is this you kind of, and you've been with the clan for a while, is this you kind of handing the keys of the castle over to a young disciple of yours?
You can put it that way. I mean, I'm the executive producer, so I have to make executive decisions, you know? But no,
kick the door and
exactly. No, but Mathematics Talent has really got that authentic Wu sound that a lot of my crew was fiending for, and I heard it after we finished The Better Tomorrow. So I was like, yo, let him, get in that studio and get that energy out there, and he did it. He did it.
Mathematics, how do you define that original Wu-Tang sound?
It's hard to define. See what I mean? It's hard to define. It's more of a feeling. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like it's within me. So it's just releasing it and letting it out and letting my expression out. I've been there since the beginning. So I started off DJing for the GZA. And hip-hop always been in my blood, and I've been a student of the God for a long time. So when it was time for me to release it, I was just ready to let it out.
RZA, how do you define the original sound of the... I know it's hard to define, but I will say, like, listening to that and listening to any of these sort of original Wu-Tang songs, there is no one else replicated that sound. I think a lot of people tried, but nobody was able to replicate the feeling that comes from that sound.
Yeah, I think it's rugged and it's raw, you know what I mean? I think you get both of those elements. And I think one thing that may be particularly identifiable with it, hip-hop is a form of music that has really encompassed a lot of elements to form itself. But yet, the Wu-Tang, I think, is basically founded in hip-hop itself. It's like, it's not founded in jazz, rock, blues. It's actually like the fragmented inspiration of hip-hop itself, from living New York City life, the subways, the trains, the smell. That is the foundation of Wu-Tang music. It's hip-hop. It's not founded in anything else. And I think when you hear it, you go, you know what? Sounds, you can't put it in no other category but hip-hop. Yeah. You know what I mean? Some songs you go, that's pop or that's jazz, but this Wu-Tang, I think, fits in the category of hip-hop, if not even its own subgenre.
It was also one of the first hip-hop groups to sort of have a foundation in pop culture as well, like horror movies and samurai movies. I can't remember anything really before that really had samples or was even like referencing these things in the lyrics.
I think, being, New York City kids, watching movies on 42nd Street, comic book stores used to be everywhere, record stores were everywhere, and all those things inspired us, block parties. Like where some guys may have learned music from watching a symphony or going to a concert, we're learning music from our DJs with 2 turntables inside of a street park that the police is gonna come and close down. You know what I mean?
Or somebody gonna come shoot up.
Or somebody's gonna shoot up, yeah. So this is a certain form that's being developed here in New York City. And when you got 9 guys from that same source of energy come together, that gave you the birth of the Wu-Tang Clan. And even a lot of Mathematics coming from Queens and being a DJ at an early age, a graffiti artist. As many people may not know, that the hands that drew the Wu-Tang W was his hands. He drew that for us. And it's just all hip-hop product. And not to be egotistic about it, but New York product, yo. This is New York, baby. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm curious, Mathematics, when you're in the studio and you're making the beats, do you have an idea as to who these beats would be specific for, or who would wanna rhyme on them, or is it kind of like this? I've put this together. Let's get someone in here and see what they can do.
Yeah, I definitely have an idea. It's like once I made the track and I listened to it, I'm like, I hear. Just knowing my brothers, I already hear like, oh, nah, this right here, Memphis sound great on this, or RZA sound great on this. And
Like Pearl Harbor, I mean, there's a lot of guys on it, but Pearl Harbor is a Ghostface track. Like, it sounds straight Ghostface as soon as it starts.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe just because he's on it, but...
No, it is.
No,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah, and I think, like, as far as Ghost ear, my ear, we kind of have, like, you know, all of us a similar ear as far as, like, that soul and certain things. So that immediately, I knew, I was like, I got to get Ghost on this track right here. And when he heard it, he was like, but by the time he heard it, I already had RZA on it, I already had Sean Price on it, and I had Meth. So it was like, you know, I didn't want to make it too long.
Had a little space left for him.
Yeah, had that space, and he hopped right in and just murdered it.
You know, you mentioned 42nd Street a minute ago. Method is currently on an HBO show on 42nd Street called The Deuce.
Yeah.
I mean, all you guys are so busy. Guys from the original members of the clan, be it recording your own albums, acting in movies, doing the score for movies or TV shows. How do you get everybody together to record? Well,
fortunately, Math has a lot of time. You know what I mean? As a producer, you have to spend more time in the studio than anybody. I don't know if the fans out there know, like, an artist could come to the studio, maybe he'll give you 4 hours. But a producer is there from the time the session starts to hours after you leave. And so if you don't have a dedicated producer who have that same drive and motivation to make music, you'll never get nothing done. So Math, he took about 3 years in his process of recording this album, mixing it and mastering it. And through that course, I mean, it took that long because of the scheduling, most likely.
Yeah, scheduling, everybody's traveling, and, you know, it was certain times we was all on the road together. I was like, oh, this is the perfect time. It's like, let me book a session and get brothers up in there. So, yeah, and then it's like, even that's kind of hard being on the road because sometimes it might be the only day off. And we could have just did like 5-6 days, and brothers might want a little rest. And
or
like,
they might have some birds in their room.
That.
I mean, do you guys feel like, since you've been at this for, the Wu-Tang Clan has been around for a couple decades, 3 decades now, right?
Yeah, well.
Was it 89, 90 the first album came out?
No, the first album was 1993.
93, excuse me.
No, all good. We're going to celebrate next year, actually. I think we're becoming eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something like that. You know what I mean? So.
But over the course of the years, you know, certain MCs have definitely had phrases that have taken off, I think, from specific albums. And I'm wondering if you guys intentionally throw out, for lack of a better word, catchphrases when you're recording, or if they just kind of come out and they like to sort of call back to them.
Yeah, I think on the lyrical side, you know, we just express ourselves, and some things will stick. You know, cream is one of the words that not only that we bring to the surface, but it's used by most hip-hop artists as a form of money. There's a legendary hip-hop artist who we all love and respect named Rakim, from Eric B. and Rakim. He had a lyric that really explains it. He said, I could take a word that is barely heard, right?
Yeah, flip it.
Flip it. I could take a phrase that's barely heard, flip it, and it's a daily word. You know what I mean? And that's what hip-hop can do. There's a poetic thing to what we do. Even though it has the aggression, it has the capturing of the essence of your city or your neighborhood or your personal experience. It is a form of poetry. And because of that, I think that it resonates with people at different times. I think I found some young people that was 23 years old, for instance. So wasn't born when my first album came out, but yet loved that music. But because he's now traveling through his puberty, through his young adulthood, and he's coming across some of the things that we verbally recorded, or some of the music inspirations that we caught while we was in that age. And that's what makes, I think, music so powerful, you know what I mean? That's part of what Wu-Tang does.
Well, I remember when Wu-Tang Forever came out, I was in 8th grade. I was in 8th grade, and it was a all-white kids school. And there was a massive amount of kids that loved Wu-Tang Forever. And that was like, what was that like for you? Because, I mean, that was kind of, I mean, obviously the first album, 36 Chambers, is, you know, a classic, and so is Wu-Tang Forever, but was Forever the breakout hit? Did you notice that was a breakout hit and you had broken through to a much wider audience?
Yeah. That's when we noticed that it was becoming more diverse.
Yeah.
And we also noticed that the responsibility became bigger.
Oh, really? Like, what do you mean?
Well, it's different when you rocking in your neighborhood, you rocking in your city, maybe you make it down to Philly or Virginia, but now you're rocking on a world stage. You know, I gotta say this to you honestly, I'm a man, so I don't have to hide nothing anymore. I mean, I thought hip-hop belonged to me. You know, it's mine. But I realized that it belongs to the world, belongs to the people.
I think people also felt that way about Wu-Tang before Forever came out, though, too. Fans felt like the Wu-Tang was theirs. You know,
Right.
don't make this bigger than me. This is my group.
Right.
I mean, we have this guy right here before we even started throwing up the signs. Like, clearly, like he feels like Wu-Tang is his.
But the positive energy about it, right, is that I'll never forget this day. Mind if I give you a little history day?
Please.
Wu-Tang is on tour with Rage Against the Machine, which was a great thing that happened for us. And I never forget the first time I saw an audience of diverse people. Like, I saw, you know, Native Americans, Asian brothers. So I just said, yo, we got the black, the brown, the red, the yellow, the white, all here. All here. And if we put our hands together, you know what I mean, that's strength. And I realized within myself that there was an energy that music was bringing people together. You don't know that until you see it. And that's what, maybe about 10 shows later, I was like, wow, this is like, we kind of rising above, racism. We're kind of rising above stereotypes. Everything was like being removed at those moments of these concerts. You got Rage Against the Machine with Zach and Tom doing their thing. You got Wu-Tang doing our thing. And everybody, 30,000 kids, all just screaming and jumping and having a good time. And that's when we developed the Wu-Tang hand sign, showing that Wu-Tang hand sign. We did that. You know what I mean? And that became the wings. I was like, those are the wings. And with these wings, we could fly above all oppression, all stereotypes, all racism, all things that hold us down. We could fly above it. And from that tour, those wings became the Wu-Tang W.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wu-Tang did, I think, really very much fly above all of those things. Matthew, you go into the studio. Is this really for you the first Wu-Tang album? I mean, I know you worked on them before, but you got to really, as much as he executive produced, kind of got to own. And
yeah, definitely.
what was that like? Is that a lot of pressure?
Nah, see, the reason why it wasn't pressure because, right, when we first was doing, after we did A Better Tomorrow, and RZA seen, like, the way my beats was progressing at that time, and he first came to me then and was like, yo, I think you should do the next Wu-Tang Clan album. And I was like, I don't know. You know, just because, it is a lot of pressure, and it's a high bar that was set when you listen to the other albums. But, so, you know, we kind of went past it, kind of went over my head, and I went to work, though. I went to work just working because that's what I normally do as far as, like, if I wasn't here now doing it professionally, I still would be doing this. I would still make a beat. I still get up and DJ. I still write my name on a wall somewhere. You know, that's just me. So when I started it, and I started putting it together, and then, like, Meth was one of the first people involved because I was on the road with Meth. And when he was hearing what I was doing, he was like, yo, hold on. He fell right in. So that was really the beginning. We started making these joints, and I remember I took, like, how many I brought to you about?
Yeah, about five songs, maybe even 6. Look, it could have been the way when he first was designed it was, you know, with Method Man, it could have been maybe a Meth album. It could have been a Math album. But when he played those 5 or 6 songs to me, I'm like, yo, this is the Wu sound that everybody's been screaming for, and keep it up. And so Math just kept going and collecting more verses. And the thing that's important that I may have forgotten about is 2 things I forgot. One, and I'm gonna just say this, he did something that's a technological genius move that I should have figured out, all right? He took his music and ran it through the ASR, which is the original beat machine that most of the Wu-Tang sounds came out of. I should have did that with A Better Tomorrow, right? And then it would have been a different solution. He figured that out. But the second thing he did that we may have gotten from, Wu-Tang may have gotten away from, is that he just made music and played it. And when the MC heard it, they wanted to get on it. Right. It's different than me calling you up like, yo, come through, or I got some money, come over here, and this, and you got to come and pitch yourself in a box, versus you was walking by, yo, what's that? Yo, let me get on that. Let me eat that up. Bringing out the natural MC in you. He was able to do that with the music on this album. and even me as an MC, I was able to not worry about where the production was going, just hear the track, feel the inspiration, and deliver my verse. So that was something that I think that I know I've gotten away from, and thanks to Math, I'm actually feeling that energy coming back. You know what I mean? Each one teach one.
Don't you feel like if you had gone back and sort of put the new music, like A Better Tomorrow, like put that into the ASR, even then it wouldn't feel the same way as Math doing it right now? It feels like an original exploration of that old sound, whereas I think you had, as an artist, had kind of moved on, yeah, and it would have just been you trying to sort of recreate something that maybe you didn't have as in you as much anymore.
It may be, but to put it through the ASR was a genius idea.
Oh, absolutely.
No, but also you're right. When you see something from on the top of the skyscraper, and that's where I probably got a chance to go. Remember, I'm traveling to China making movies. I'm looking from the top of the skyscraper. Yeah. It's a great view up there, but it's a different view on the ground.
When you're looking up from the
Exactly, and Math is able to look right from the ground, and that's where the foundation is at. And I think he took it back to the foundation. There's a song in this album that I suggest everybody to listen to called "Lesson Learned." And when that beat comes on, you automatically knows, yo, that's Wu-Tang, that's hip hop, that's that gets me like, yo, gets my adrenaline going.
Now, you said a second ago that, at one point you felt like you didn't own Wu-Tang anymore. And I have to ask this question, in the last couple of years, someone else tried to own Wu-Tang.
Well, I never said I didn't own it now.
Yeah.
I actually legally own it.
Yeah, this is true. But
I know what you mean.
Yeah, the Pharma Bro, as they refer to him, Martin Shkreli, purchased the last album for $1 million, and I think he no longer he no longer has he has sold it back or sold it to someone else. I'm not sure.
I don't know the end result. I know he put it on eBay, and I think the bidding has got over $1 million actually.
What was that like for you?
I don't think he has the legal right to do that. I think there's a whole bunch of parameters that got to deal with. But, I take the blame for the situation. A lot of fans was really upset with me from making a transaction like that. But that was a calculated decision. I felt that music was being devalued. I felt that art itself was being devalued. And I felt that what we do and the time we put into it has to have some kind of tangible value to it. I couldn't understand how somebody would pay $600 for their headphones and their phone and won't pay the 99 cents for the song that makes their headphones useful.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so I was bugged out on it. So I was like, yo, let's, me, my buddy Silver Rings, of course, we just came with a concept to make it a single unit and put it through a different form of outlet, which was this album was auctioned off. You know what I mean? And, I'm glad, first we talked to Sotheby's about it, and they thought it was a good idea, but they never tried it. And they was like, well, we'll start the bidding, at $300,000. I was like, nah. And I'm thankful to a company called Paddle 8, a group of young people in that field of art who came on board, and they was like, no, we'll start the bidding, at $1 million. And I was like, that sounds kind of right, the way to start this. And just to prove a point that there is value on music, and we have to put that value back on it. Now, Martin is the guy who got it. He bought it, put it in his possession. And he has a lot of dirt on his name. He's done a lot of things, right? But for the history of music, he actually did a good thing. Because when he put it on eBay, and I'm not taking up for Martin, I think he's behind bars and he's dealing with his life. That's his life. But when he put it on eBay, he did put an interesting quote with it. He says he bought this record because of his respect of Wu-Tang and their history, and he bought it as a gift back to the legacy. He said that he also agrees that the value of music has been taken away. Mm-hmm. And by putting it on eBay, he wants to see if anybody else out there feels that there is a value. And when he put it up, the first bid was like a couple of grand. And by the time I heard about it, I think it wasn't even past 50 grand. And that means that something that, that was $2 million at the moment he bought it had devalued itself, right? But within 5 days, it was up to $1 million, which means there are people out there who see the value in it. And I don't know who that person is or who these people who are bidding on it, but the moral is being made that no, we do value music, we value Wu-Tang, we value what we have offered culture. And that's important. It's different when somebody died and you go, oh yeah, let's go down. You know, everybody want to go down to Minnesota, you know what I mean, and go into Prince's crib, you know what I mean? Which I'm peculiar about that. People want to drive to Graceland. No, while the person is living, while the entity is alive, you can appreciate the value. And I think he helped that argument. It's still an ongoing thing, but I do think he helped that argument.
Yeah, you essentially tried to make a statement about the valuation of music and how we devalue it. You had no idea though that a harbinger of Satan was going to actually buy the album.
No, I did not have that. No idea that. Donnie, sorry, I didn't know.
It's not your fault. It's one of those weird things where you're like, oh, we did it. Oh shit.
Oh, yo, can I tell y'all when I found out? Okay, I mean to take over the thing like that.
Go ahead.
So look, we meet in March, April, right? Soho House. And there's a few guys, there's 4 guys who got the bids in, and they, we're talking, and the paddleweight guy's like, I think this is the guy. He's young, he gets it, he's a hip hop fan. We meet, and I'm like, okay, he good, because I'm like, this is like a baby to me. You know what I mean? I got to put it in somebody's hands. And he's like, and he was very, he had a great story from his life, coming from his family from Albania, immigrants, working as janitors and working his way up to who he is. So I'm like, wow, that sounds like a similar story for me. Brownsville, poor, and all this. But anyway, we make the deal. About maybe 3 months later, I'm home, my wife, chilling, and Bill Maher comes on, right? And Bill Maher, I love him. He's a funny dude, right? He comes on, and he goes, hey, you guys hear about this scumbag? And it's Martin Shkreli. I'm like, and he goes through the whole story. I'm like, wait a minute. Hey, baby. That's the guy that bought the album. She's like, what? What you mean? I said, that's the guy. And from that day forth, it just got worse and worse and worse as far as his reputation, Hillary Clinton, the hike, the pill hike, all those things. But if I was aware of that, you know what I mean, I may have a very different approach to putting that in his hand. But it was afterwards, and it was a shock to me. And but like I said, he has to pay for anything he did that's out of order. Like I pay for my things that I do out of order. But this history that we made together for the Once Upon a Time in Shaolin is actually, I would consider, a good thing for music.
Yeah. Matt, I'm curious, what's your process when it comes, like, what's a song, a track on the album that took you the longest time, and what about it took so long? Outside of maybe scheduling conflicts.
Yeah, see, track that took the longest might have been People Say. Just because it's like how we were saying earlier that when you get that when you hear that beat, it's like, wait, hold on, I want to rock that, and it's like it was a couple of brothers that actually heard it after somebody else got on it when they wasn't in the studio and was like, wait, hold up, I gotta change my verse. yeah. So which made it better, which also gave me another verse to hold for later. So it was like all good, it's like win-win. But I think each song actually took some time, just because, like he said, you got to be the first one and last one out. And even when you leave the studio, when I go back home, as soon as I go in my crib, I'm going to work in my home studio. And it's like I hear certain things. I could be resting. All of a sudden, I'm popping up like, oh, let me do this. Let me do that. So it definitely took time. I can't really calculate each song and how long it actually took, because during the process, I'm still traveling. I'm still going on tour. It's other, plus you got to get your family time in. And, so it's hard to say which track really took the longest.
One track that I think took a long time, bro. And I'm not going to be shy to say this. If what you say is true, how long did it take for RZA?
Oh, yeah.
Yo, RZA takes a long time to do it, but that's why he's the genius. Because in one or two lines, you're going to get a whole book out of him. but he takes a long time. He's always been like that since we was kids. He takes a long time to construct his lyrics. You know what I mean? Like, he'll spend 6 months on a song. You know what I mean? Which is peculiar, but when you listen to his lyrics and the
Analyze it,
the
break it
perfection
down.
of what he, the perfection of what he does, you'll go, wow, I can see why he took that time. You know what I mean? He's very, very, very calculative on it.
Yeah.
But that song, I just remember you waiting for that verse for a long time. That's why I
Yeah,
had
you're
to-
right. Yeah,
had to
you're right.
point
You're
that
right.
out.
You're right. Yeah. And it's like in that verse, he's breaking down an MC, what an MC does, but it's so powerful. It's like if you dissect them lines, like really, like wow. When I got it, I was happy. I was like, yo.
I think a Better Tomorrow was supposed to. You had said was potentially the last album, right? Was that going to be the case with that?
Yeah, I thought that, or even Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, would be like the last of it. You know what I mean? And then I had talked to Ghost maybe 9 months ago, and he was like, we got to close the book in a different way. You know what I mean? Ghost is a very important Wu-Tang member. When the idea was formulating in my head, he was like my right hand at that time. You know what I mean? And there was nobody who really understood it as much as he did. So it's always good for me to go back to him. Even now, right? Even during this campaign, he's been the most prolific member to join me, have conversations with me, and help, us guide it, right, and help Math as well. But anyway, he said that it's not the way to close the book, in mystery. You know what I mean? And so, this record, the Saga Continues, is a step towards what he thinks is the proper way to close the book. And
It feels like it's opening the book even more,
well,
which I like.
I
More
like that
Wu-Tang,
too.
please.
But I think that Ghost he has a task on his hand now. So how Math was able to let us know the Saga Continues. Ghost is now in charge of the next, I guess you never can say final until final, but, potentially the next final Wu-Tang album, which will celebrate 25 years in the business. He has to be the man to guide that ship, and he's agreed to do that.
Wow, that's amazing. Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question?
Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today. This has been really incredible. RZA, 2 quick questions. What was it like directing Iron Fist this season? And can you talk about your relationship with Redman and his contribution to the new record?
It was a pleasure to work with Marvel directing Iron Fist. I got a chance to spend a summer in New York when I did it, so that was cool. And Redman is like a Wu-Tang. He's a brother of ours, but if you was to put him in a family member, he's definitely like our first cousin. You know what I mean?
Next question, right here.
Hi guys, thank you so much for being here. So I had an opportunity to listen to the album and it was phenomenal. You guys had taken like a socially political approach to some of the skits you put in. Why did you feel it was important to speak on those things regarding like the youth and women and black women and men relations?
Well, basically because when you deal with music, it's entertainment. Me personally, I feel like when you get to a certain, I feel if you have an obligation to teach. And I think that sometimes if you do it, you could do it in a song here and there, but I don't want to be too preachy. So I think you should always deliver a message somewhere in the music or somewhere along the way. And there's certain things that I wanted to say personally that I was able to get out through the skits. So, yeah.
Wu-Tang has always been a fairly, I would say, apolitical group, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, we knowledge is the foundation of all things, and you must know the ledge or you fall off the edge. And we know that knowledge saved us, and we hopefully hope that some youth can hear our music, hear our lyrics, get that knowledge, get that wisdom, get that understanding, get that culture, get these degrees inside of you, so that when you're faced with these conflicts in life, you have some information to overcome them. I believe that, just in 2 minutes, people change their whole life. A crime, You know, somebody could pull his gun out, get to an argument, shoot somebody. That's quick, yo. Or 2-minute sex is pregnancy. You know what I mean?
Probably longer than 2 minutes for the sake
You got
of the
the,
sex,
you got the oatmeal guys. All right? Point being made is that it changes your whole life. But if you would stop and think, no, that's why we talk about chess, because chess means you got to forecast and calculate ahead. You know, that's why we say through the knowledge. The first thing is to look, listen, observe, and respect the situation before you act upon it. And this way, when we could get those ideas into, first of all, young people who are most important, because then they grow with it, but even to adults who may have missed it, it's important to us. And it keeps the communication between us as the human family on a positive playing field. And that's, that W in Wu-Tang is for wisdom.
Absolutely. I think we have time for one more question. Who's got the, right here? Hi.
Much respect, RZA. Big fan of your music, going all the way back to your initial album, Into the Wu. I had a couple of questions for you. My first question is, what was your favorite album that you worked on back in the 90s? Because I was a big fan of Only Built for Cuban Links with Raekwon and Ghost.
Yeah.
I still play that to this day. And my second question for you is, who inspired you musically, group-wise or individually?
Well, thank you, first of all, for being a fan of Wu and listening. On the solo albums, of course, depending on the day, right? Sometimes it's Cuban Links, sometimes it's Liquid Sports. But I did have some great days in LA with the drop top 500 Benz, blasting ODB and feeling good, all right? As far as musically inspiration, my primary inspiration actually either came from New York City itself, hip-hop, my cousin, the RZA, and some self-generated weird interest that I had about sound. But as I started to grow, and maybe around 1994, 95, when I started realizing, hey, I'm a producer and I have to continue this up, Isaac Hayes was a great inspiration to me. And by the time we got to Wu-Tang Forever, I'll never forget spending time with Quincy Jones, who gave me the mathematical formula I needed to further evolve me on my musical career. And I'll share this with y'all openly. He just said, RZA, it's not music until the phrase repeats itself. And because I'm the type of guy that'll keep going and like whatever. He's like, no. Once you find the repeat point, it becomes music. And so if you listen to Triumph, it's a definite repetition of a certain progression. And the only thing that changes is the amplitude. And so that wisdom he gave me and the time I spent with Isaac Hayes led me to actually become a composer and led me to become, evolved as an artist. And I think those meant a lot.
Matthew, what about you? What was your sort of biggest influence growing up outside of this guy right here?
Biggest influence growing up, I grew up in a house where a lot of music was being played, a lot of different music. So I always had a love for music. It's like my mom's would listen to Solomon Burke, my pops like James Brown and Motown sound was there, and then older brothers and sisters was listening to like the Stylistics, and then hip hop was being brought in the house very early, like from park jams, and so I had a lot of different influences. And like he said, once you get to a certain point, you start making beats and you start hearing different songs and studying producers. It's a few producers I fell in love with, like musically, and Isaac Hayes was definitely one. David Porter, Curtis Mayfield, Stevie Wonder. Like those was definitely like strong influences for me.
I'm such a dummy. I learned just recently that Wonder produced and recorded all the instruments on like those 5 albums. Someone told me that. I was like, I didn't know that. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah, Stevie was ill. And one thing about Stevie that I found out, that because he came into Motown as a little kid, little Stevie, the little blonde boy, but he hung around the Motown house every day, and he would sit and learn from each of the Funk Brothers.
Wow.
And that's how he learned all them instruments that he learned how to play. He picked their brains and he learned it, being blind.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Let me give you one quick recent Wu secret I've been using. Lyrics are important for Wu-Tang. right? And I like to play Leonard Cohen lyrics. You know, when I was doing the Better Tomorrow, if you come to the session, I would hit Leonard Cohen songs. I think the lyrical potency is important, right? And if you could find a poetic way to describe a situation. So I just want to share that. Leonard Cohen, rest in peace, I think one of the greatest lyricists as well.
And that's like one of those ways that you're playing it in the studio for other people that you're working with as well. And I'm imagining it's just sort of get people in the frame of mind of how to combine words, how to rhyme, how to tell a story, like you said, poetically. You know, whether they're
how to condense a lot of information into one line.
Yeah. That's so interesting. How did you find Leonard Cohen? When did you find him?
I found Leonard Cohen as early as 1992. And
Like when The Future came out, right? That album right around that time.
But I found the old albums first. Like, you know, because I think I was walking through Manhattan, you know, people in the village was getting rid of their vinyl, like on the side of the street. And I'm a type of guy, like, I'll take all those, thank you. Yeah. Went home, Leonard Cohen, Who by Fire.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? The Stranger Song.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he mentioned Iron Fist. Even when I did my movie Iron Fist, the movie, I probably played The Stranger Song like 100 times and watched the movie and everything. So anyway, we get inspiration from a lot of things, especially today.
Absolutely. And guys, we get inspiration from you guys and your albums as well. Thank you so much for being here. The Saga continues is on the shelves now, right?
Yeah.
Guys, give it up
now.
for Mathematics and RZA. Give it up. Let's hear
Thank
it.
you.